The great chamber of the Galactic. Council floated in the darkness between stars. It was an ancient structure built by the first spacefaring civilizations millions of years ago. Inside, 12 representatives from the galaxy's most powerful species gathered around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. Belthara stood at the center. Her crystalline body reflected the light. Rainbow patterns across the walls. She was the supreme arbiter, the highest authority in known space. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 50,000 years of galactic law. "We are here to discuss the human problem," she announced. Around the table, the other council members shifted in their seats. Some had multiple limbs, others floated in specialized environmental suits. A few were energy beings contained in magnetic fields, but all of them shared one thing: concern about the newest species to join the galactic community. Ambassador Kelthros of the Virin Collective was the first to speak. His blue skin rippled with emotion as he gestured with all four of his arms. "The humans have been in space for only 200 years. Most species take 10,000 years to colonize what they have achieved. 47 systems added." General Morvex, his 6 arms crossed over his armored chest. "They control 47 systems now. When we granted them faster than light technology, they controlled 3. Belthara nodded slowly. The Council's generosity was meant to welcome them. Instead, they have used our gift to expand at an alarming rate. A holographic display appeared above the table. It showed human space as a growing red sphere among the territories of other species. The expansion was aggressive, pushing into unclaimed regions that the Council had reserved for future allocation. "They trade with everyone," complained Senator Thrix, a floating jellyfish-like being from the outer rim. "They make deals. They offer new technologies. They are disrupting the economic balance we have maintained for millennia. And they ask too many questions," added Kelthros. "Questions about Council history, questions about how other species were integrated, questions about the tributary system." The room fell silent at that last word, tributary. It was the foundation of galactic order. Every species that reached a certain level of development was required to contribute to the Council. 30% of their resources, 30% of their new technologies, 30% of their military capacity. In exchange, they receive protection, guidance, and a place in galactic civilization. Every species had agreed. Some had negotiated. Some had resisted at first, but in the end all had accepted. It was simply how things worked. The strong guided the weak, the old educated the young. Council maintained order. "The humans must be brought into compliance," Velthara declared. "We have been patient. We have been welcoming. But they must understand their place." "What if they refuse?" asked a small voice from the corner. It belonged to Representative Myra, a timid herbivore species that had joined the Council only 3,000 years ago. Morvex laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "They won't refuse. No one refuses the Council. We have 1,000 warships. We have weapons that can destroy stars. What do the humans have? Primitive missiles and enthusiasm. They have nuclear weapons," Myra pointed out quietly. "So did we when we were children," Morvex replied dismissively. "They will learn. They will see reason. And if they don't, we will teach them." Velthora raised one crystalline hand. The decision is made. We will send the humans our standard integration demand. 30% of resources, technology and military capacity they will accept. Council oversight on all future expansion. They will cease their unauthorized colonization, and they will pay tribute for the privilege of galactic citizenship, and if they refuse, Myra asked again, then we will implement corrective measures, Velthora said coldly, the same measures we have used on 17 previous occasions. A show of force, a blockade of their home world, the occupation of their most valuable colonies. They will submit just as everyone else has. The council voted. 12 hands turned to pulse and energy fields, rose in agreement. The decision was unanimous, as it always was. The message was prepared by the council's diplomatic corps. It was written in the formal language of galactic law, full of phrases like mutual benefit and necessary contribution and the greater good of all species. But beneath the polite words, the meaning was clear: submit or suffer. The message was encrypted with the Council's highest level security codes. It was transmitted directly to Earth's government through official diplomatic channels, and then, to make sure the humans understood the seriousness of the situation, it was also broadcast to every human colony, every human ship, and every human station in known space. The message gave humanity 10 solar cycles to respond, 10 days to make the most important decision in their species' history. In his war room on the Krethian home world, General Morvax was already planning the military campaign. He pulled up tactical maps of human space, analyzing their defenses, calculating the optimal invasion routes. It was routine work. He had done it 17 times before for 17 different species. Their fleet is concentrated around Earth, and their largest colonies, he noted too. His staff, standard defensive posture. They're protecting their population centers as expected. What about their weapons capabilities? Asked one of his junior officers. Adequate for their age, Morvax replied. Nuclear missiles, kinetic weapons, some basic energy shields. Nothing we haven't seen before, nothing that can stand against the enforcement fleet. How long do you estimate the campaign will take? 3 weeks at most, Morvax said confidently. 1 week to reach their space, 1 week to demonstrate overwhelming force, 1 week for their surrender and the installation of peacekeeping garrisons. Standard procedure. He closed the tactical display and leaned back in his chair. The humans are like all young species, full of pride and ambition. They think they're special. They think they can challenge the old order. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. They'll learn, they always do. On the council station, Velthara returned to her private chambers. She had presided over the integration of 11 new species during her time as supreme arbiter. The humans would be the 12th. The process was always the same: demand, negotiation, acceptance. Sometimes there was minor military action, sometimes there was economic pressure, but the result was always inevitable. She looked out at the stars through her transparent wall. Somewhere out there, the humans were reading the council's message. They were probably panicking now, arguing among themselves, debating whether to fight or surrender. She had seen it all before. In the end, they would choose survival. They would bow. They would pay tribute, and in a few generations, they would forget they had ever been independent. They would become just another species in the Council's great tapestry, contributing their small part to galactic civilization. Velthara felt no guilt about this. It was the natural order of things. The strong guided the weak. The old educated the young. The galaxy needed order, and the Council provided it. She returned to her work already, thinking about the paperwork that would follow the humans' acceptance. There would be treaties to draft, tribute schedules to establish, oversight committees to organize. Tedious but necessary work. She never imagined that 10 days later, everything she knew about galactic order would shatter with a single word. 9 days had passed since the Council's message reached Earth. The Galactic Council reconvened in their great chamber, expecting humanity's response at any moment. The atmosphere was relaxed. Several Council members were already discussing how to divide humanity's tribute payments. I propose the humans' medical technology goes to the Vrin Collective. Ambassador Kelthro suggested their biological research would benefit our people greatly, and their industrial capacity should support the core worlds, added Senator Thrix. They have impressive manufacturing capabilities for such a young species. Veltharan nodded from her position at the center. We will review their asset distribution after they formally accept tribute status. Has their response arrived yet? Junior Aide, a small green creature with large eyes, scurried forward. Yes, Supreme Arbiter. The human response was received 4 minutes ago. I'm transmitting it to the chamber now. The holographic display activated above the Council table. Everyone expected to see Earth Secretary General surrounded by advisors, perhaps with a prepared speech about cooperation and partnership. Some species like to save face with carefully worded acceptance statements. The Council always allowed this small dignity. Instead, the hologram showed a simple image. Secretary General Chen Martinez sat alone behind a plain desk. No advisors, no decorations, no flags or symbols of Earth government. Just one woman with dark hair pulled back, wearing a simple gray suit. Her face was calm. Her hands were folded on the desk. Front of her. Her eyes were cold. She looked directly at the camera. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. No, the transmission ended. The Council chamber fell into absolute silence. The holographic display went dark. The junior aide checked his equipment nervously, thinking there must have been a technical error. That's it? Kelthros asked, his voice rising in confusion. That's the entire message. The aide checked again. Yes, Ambassador. 1 word, 9 seconds of transmission. Nothing else. They must not understand, Kelthros said, laughing nervously. They don't comprehend what they're refusing. Send them a clarification. Explain the consequences more clearly. But Velthara wasn't laughing. Her crystalline body had stopped glowing. Something that only happened when she was deeply troubled. Play it again, she ordered. The transmission replayed. Secretary General Martinez, the calm face, the cold eyes, the single word, no. Check the transmission data, Velthara commanded. Where was this sent? Just to us. The aide's fingers moved quickly across his console. Then he stopped. His large eyes grew even larger. Supreme Arbiter. This wasn't sent only to the Council, it was broadcast simultaneously to every Council species home world, to every major news network, to every diplomatic channel, to every public information system in known space. The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members rose from their seats shouting over each other. Kelthrose's blue skin turned purple with rage. Morvex slammed his fists on the table, cracking the ancient material. Senator Thrix's floating body pulsed with agitated colors. They publicized their refusal, Kelthrose shouted. They broadcast defiance across the entire galaxy. This is an insult beyond measure, Morvex growled. They're not just refusing us. They're making a spectacle of it. Velthara raised her hand for silence. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. When everyone was finally still, she spoke in a voice like ice cracking. The humans have done something no species has done in 50,000 years. They have refused the Council publicly. They have made their defiance known to every species in the galaxy. This is not ignorance, this is a deliberate challenge to our authority. Let me take the enforcement fleet to Earth, Morvex demanded. We'll blockade their home world. Within a month they'll be begging to accept our terms. No, Velthara said quietly, not Earth. That would make martyrs of them. We'll target one of their outer colonies, New Sarajevo. It's far from Earth, lightly defended, but valuable enough to make our point. We'll occupy it, install a garrison, and force the humans to negotiate. She turned to Morvex. Take the enforcement fleet, 200 ships. Make it clear that this is just a fraction of our military power. Offer them one chance to surrender before you attack. Standard procedure, Morvex grinned, showing his sharp teeth. It will be my pleasure, Supreme Arbiter. As the Council meeting ended, Velthara remained in the chamber. She watched the replay of the human transmission again. That single word, that calm face, those cold eyes, something about it disturbed her in a way she couldn't quite explain. She activated her private communication channel and contacted the Council's intelligence division. I want everything we know about humanity piled into a complete report. Their history, their psychology, their military capabilities. Everything. That will take several weeks, Supreme Arbiter, the intelligence officer replied. You have 3 days, Velthara said. Cutting the connection across the galaxy. The human transmission was being replayed on millions of screens. Every species watched Secretary General Martinez deliver her one-word response. News networks analyzed it, diplomats debated it, military strategists tried to understand what it meant. Among the younger species, those who had only recently joined the Council, the message sparked something dangerous. Hoping. If the humans could say no, maybe others could too. Maybe the Council wasn't as all-powerful as they claimed. On Earth, Chen Martinez sat in her office watching the same news broadcasts. Her advisors had warned her that this approach was risky. Some had called it suicidal, but she had insisted. They think we're like everyone else, she had told her military chiefs. They think we'll fold when they threaten us. They need to understand from the very beginning that we're not playing by their rules. Her communication device buzzed. It was Admiral Jackson, head of Earth Space Defense Force. Madam Secretary General, we're detecting a large fleet entering the outer system, 200 ships council. Configuration. They're headed for New Sarajevo. Martinez nodded. She had expected this. Is everything ready? Yes, ma'am. The civilians are being evacuated now. The trap is set. We're just waiting for them to take the bait. Good, Martinez said. Let's show the council what no really means. She stood and walked to her window, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the council's enforcement fleet was preparing to teach humanity a lesson. They thought they were hunting prey. They had no idea they were walking into a trap set by predators. General Moravec stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will. Around him, 200 warships moved in perfect formation through the void. It was the largest military force assembled in 300 years, more than enough to handle one human colony. Entering the New Sarajevo system now. His navigator reported the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Ahead of them, a blue-green planet hung in space. New Sarajevo. Population 12 million humans. Defenses minimal. It should have been an easy target. Scan the system, Morvax ordered. I want to know the position of every human ship, every defense station, every possible threat. The scans came back quickly. 3 human warships in orbit, a dozen defense platforms, some orbital stations, exactly what they had expected. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet, his communications officer reported. Put it on screen. A human appeared on the display. He was a military officer, his uniform decorated with medals. His face was hard, weathered by years of service. I am Colonel Davies, commander of New Sarajevo's defense force. You are entering sovereign human territory. You have 6 hours to withdraw. This is your only warning. Morvex laughed. It was absurd. This human colonel commanding 3 ships against 200 was giving him a warning. You misunderstand the situation, Morvax replied. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and your people will not be harmed. Resist, and we will take your colony by force. Colonel Davies' expression didn't change. 6 hours. Starting now. The transmission ended. Arrogant fools, Morvax muttered. Target their defense platforms. Fire a warning shot. Let them see what real power looks like. The enforcement fleet opened fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space. The human defense platforms were destroyed in seconds. The 3 human warships retreated toward the planet, firing a few desperate shots that bounced harmlessly off council shields. Easy, Morvax said with satisfaction. Prepare to occupy the planet. This will be over before, sir. His sensor officer shouted. The moon is opening on the main screen. New Sarajevo's single moon began to split apart. But it wasn't breaking up. It was opening deliberately like a flower, blooming, and beneath the rocky exterior was metal technology weapons. It wasn't a moon at all. It was a weapons platform the size of a planetoid. Evasive action, Morvax screamed, but it was too late. The humans had already fired. The weapons platform that had disguised itself as New Sarajevo's moon opened fire with everything it had. Railguns launched projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Each tungsten rod carried enough kinetic energy to punch through any shield the Council had ever developed. Morvax watched in horror as the first volley tore through his fleet. The unbreakable will shields held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. The ship shook violently as impacts hammered across the hull. "Return fire," Morvax roared. "All ships, concentrate fire on that platform." The enforcement fleet tried to respond, but something was wrong. Their targeting systems were malfunctioning. Ships reported ghost signals, sensor echoes, and phantom contacts appearing everywhere. The humans were jamming their systems in ways that shouldn't be possible. Then the human warships that had retreated earlier suddenly reappeared. But they didn't come from where they should have been. They materialized inside the Council formation, having jumped through faster than light space in impossibly short distances. "That's impossible," the navigator shouted. "You can't microjump like that. Calculations alone would take hours. The stress on the ship would tear it apart." But the humans were doing it anyway. Their ships blinked in and out of normal space like deadly fireflies, appearing just long enough to fire and then vanishing before the Council ships could respond. It was like fighting ghosts. Their targeting life support system. Specifically, the tactical officer reported, his voice rising in panic. "They're not trying to destroy our ships, they're trying to kill the crews." Morvax felt cold fear creeping up his spine. This wasn't how civilized species fought. You aimed for engines, for weapons, for shields. You tried to disable your enemy, not slaughter them. But the humans were targeting the areas where crew members would be stationed. They were hunting the people inside the ships. "Sir, we're receiving broadcasts on all frequencies," the communications officer said. It's the humans. They're talking to our crews." "What are they saying?" "They're calling out individual captains by name. They're telling them about their families, their home planets. They know things they shouldn't know. Classified things, personal things." On every Council ship, human voices echoed through the communication systems. They spoke in perfect translations of every language. "Captain Velcross of the Morning Star, we know about your son on Virin Prime. We know about his medical condition. We know about the treatment he's receiving. It would be terrible if something happened to the hospital where he's staying. Commander Thrixavel, your mate, is currently visiting the Coral Gardens on your home world. Beautiful place. Would be a shame if she had an accident. Admiral Morvax, we've been watching your war room for 3 months. We know your strategies. We know your tactics. We know you think you're a great general. You're not. You're just old." It was psychological warfare on a level the Council had never experienced. The humans had spent 2 centuries studying them, learning about them, gathering information through seemingly innocent trade and cultural exchanges. And now they were using that knowledge as a weapon. "How do they know these things?" Morvax whispered. "How?" More human ships appeared. These weren't the sleek warships from before. These were massive, ugly vessels, bristling with weapons. They looked like they had been built solely for killing. "Launching drones," a human voice announced calmly over the open channel. "You have approximately 30 seconds to abandon ship. This is your only warning. We are not interested in taking prisoners." Thousands of small drones poured from the human ships. They weren't regular Missiles, they were smart weapons, each one capable of independent targeting and decision-making. They swarmed around Council ships like angry insects, finding weak points, exploiting gaps in shields, targeting critical systems. The Council's enforcement fleet, which had entered the system in perfect formation, was falling apart. Ships collided with each other trying to evade. Captains screamed contradictory orders. Some tried to flee, others tried to fight. None of it worked. All ships retreat. Morvex finally ordered, jump to faster than light, get us out of here. But the humans had planned for that too. The moment Council ships tried to activate their FTL drives, the human weapons platform fired electromagnetic pulse weapons that scrambled their systems. Ships that tried to jump anyway were torn apart by the stress of incomplete translations between normal space and FTL. In 4 hours the battle was over. Of the 200 ships that had entered the new Sarajevo system, only 7 managed to escape. 193 ships were destroyed, disabled, or captured. 30,000 Council personnel were dead. 50,000 more were prisoners of war. Admiral Morvex was not among the survivors. His flagship had been hit in the first volley. The humans broadcast the entire battle across the galaxy. They didn't edit it. They didn't censor it. They showed everything in brutal graphic detail, and they added commentary explaining their tactics, pointing out the Council's mistakes, making it clear that this wasn't luck or surprise. This was superior planning, superior tactics, and superior understanding of warfare. The message was clear. This is what happens when you threaten us. On the Council station, Velthara watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Around her, the other Council members were in various states of shock, anger, and fear. They destroyed an enforcement fleet. Kelthros whispered, 200 ships gone. They didn't just destroy it, Senator Thrix said quietly. They humiliated it. They made it look easy. We need to respond, one of the junior Council members demanded. We need to assemble a larger fleet. We need to show them that we cannot be defied. But Velthara held up one crystalline hand. For silence. No more military action, not yet, not until we understand what we're dealing with. She turned to her aide. Where is the intelligence report I requested on humanity? It's ready, Supreme Arbiter. But I should warn you, the findings are disturbing. Show me. The holographic display activated, and Velthara began to read. What she learned over the next hour changed everything she thought she knew about humanity. The report began with basic information. Humans came from a planet called Earth. The Council knew this, but they hadn't fully understood what kind of planet Earth was. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. It was a planet that had tried to kill humanity through every means possible. Ice ages that covered continents in ice, kilometers thick. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years. Diseases that wiped out large portions of the population. Predators that hunted humans, parasites that ate them from inside. Even the plants were poisonous. Every species in the Council came from garden worlds where life was relatively easy. Food was abundant. Predators were rare. The climate was stable. Cooperation ensured survival. Humanity evolved in an environment where everything, including other humans, was A threat they didn't develop. Cooperation to survive. They developed warfare, the report. Detailed human history, thousands of years of near constant weapons development that never stopped. Wars that burned entire continents. Genocide, slavery, conquest, humans had been fighting each other since before. They developed agriculture. They weaponized splitting the atom. Within a century of discovering it, the report noted they had weapons capable of destroying their own planet before. They achieved spaceflight. But the most disturbing part of the report was the psychological analysis. Human psychology was fundamentally different from every other species in the Council. Humans had a concept called spite. It was the willingness to harm yourself, if it meant harming your enemy more. It was the choice to accept mutual destruction rather than submit to domination. Council psychologists couldn't find an equivalent in any other species. Humans also had a capacity for what they called total war. It was the willingness to commit every resource, sacrifice everything, endure any hardship, and pay any price to achieve victory. Most species would negotiate. Before reaching that point, humans would burn their own worlds before surrendering. They are persistence predators, the report concluded. They evolved to chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They apply the same psychology to warfare. They don't stop. They don't give up. They just keep coming until their enemy breaks. Belthera finished reading and sat in silence for a long time. Finally she spoke. They've been preparing for this since they first saw us. Supreme Arbiter, her aide asked. They knew this confrontation would come. They knew that eventually someone would try to dominate them, so they spent 200 years preparing. They studied us. They learned our weaknesses. They developed weapons specifically designed to counter our tactics. They set traps like the one at New Sarajevo. Throughout their space, they've been playing a long game while we thought they were just enthusiastic newcomers. She pulled up another piece of data that made her blood run cold, and according to our intelligence network, human ships have been detected near every council homeworld in the past week. They're not attacking, they're watching. The implications were clear. The humans could reach any council world. They had already proven they could defeat council military forces. And they were sending a message: we know where you live. What do we do? Kelthros asked, his voice small and frightened. Velthara didn't answer immediately. For 50,000 years, the council had maintained order. The council chamber had never felt so cold. 3 days had passed since the destruction of the enforcement fleet, and the council members still looked like they had seen a ghost. In a way, they had seen the ghost of their own invincibility die at New Sarajevo. Velthara called the emergency session to order. The xenobiology team has completed their analysis of humanity. Dr. Zextel will present the findings. A small insect-like being approached the center of the chamber. Dr. Zextel was the council's leading expert on alien species. She had studied hundreds of civilizations across thousands of years. Her reputation was unmatched. She looked terrified. Esteemed council members, she began, her voice shaking slightly, I have spent the last 3 days reviewing everything we know about humanity. I have consulted with our finest biologists, psychologists, and Sociologists, what I'm about to tell you will be difficult to accept, but you must understand the full scope of what we are dealing with. The holographic display activated, showing an image of Earth rotating slowly in space. It looked beautiful. From orbit, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, peaceful. This is Earth, Dr. Zextol continued. We classified it as a Class 12 death world when we first surveyed it. We now believe the classification was too generous. Earth should be Class 15 or higher. It is one of the most hostile planets we have ever encountered. She brought up geological data. Earth has experienced 5 major extinction events. Each one wiped out most of the life on the planet. The most recent one, 65 million years ago, killed the dominant species of the time. The planet has cycled through ice ages that covered half its surface in ice. It has supervolcanoes capable of causing global winter for decades. It has tectonic plates that constantly shift, causing earthquakes and tsunamis. The very ground beneath human feet is unstable. Senator Thrix floated forward. Many planets have natural disasters. What makes Earth special? Life never stopped, Dr. Zextol replied. Every time Earth tried to kill everything on it, life adapted and came back stronger. The species that survived did so by becoming more aggressive, more adaptable, more resilient. Earth is not just a harsh planet. It is a planet that has been running an evolutionary arms race for billions of years. She changed the display to show various Earth animals, predators with sharp teeth, parasites, venomous creatures. Humans evolved in this environment. They were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest. They were not the most venomous. They survived through intelligence, tool use, and cooperation. But most importantly, they survived through persistence. Persistence, Kelthros asked. Humans are persistent predators, Dr. Zextol explained. They evolved to chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the prey collapse from exhaustion. No other Earth predator can do this. Humans can run continuously for longer than almost any animal on their planet. They heal quickly. They can survive in almost any climate. They can eat almost anything. They are generalists who can adapt to any situation. She pulled up new data showing human history, but here is what truly makes humans dangerous. They never stopped competing. Even after they dominated their planet, they continued to fight each other. For thousands of years, they developed increasingly sophisticated weapons. They created strategies and tactics. They built empires and tore them down. They fought wars that killed millions. The display showed images of ancient battles, medieval sieges, modern warfare. The progression was startling. Humans had gone from hitting each other with rocks to splitting atoms in just a few thousand years. They weaponized everything. Dr. Zextol continued. Disease, psychology, economics, information. They didn't just fight with weapons. They fought with ideas. They created propaganda to demoralize enemies. They used economic sanctions to starve nations. They developed psychological warfare to break their opponent's will to fight. But they stopped fighting. One council member protested. And GT, they achieved global unity before reaching space. And GT, no, Dr. Zextol said firmly. They didn't stop fighting. They redirected their competition. Instead of fighting each other, they began preparing to fight others. When they looked at the stars, they didn't see peace and cooperation. They saw potential threats. They saw the ultimate high ground. They saw the next battlefield. She pulled up military data that made several council members gasp. In the 200 years since achieving faster than light travel, humans have never stopped developing weapons. They built ships specifically designed for combat. They created doctrines for interstellar warfare. They wargamed scenarios against hypothetical alien threats. They were preparing for this confrontation before they even met us. And GT, how did we miss this? Felthara asked quietly. And GT, because they hit it, Dr. Zextal replied. They presented themselves as friendly traders and curious explorers. They asked questions that seemed innocent. They shared culture and knowledge. But the entire time they were gathering intelligence. They studied our technology. They learned our languages. They analyzed our military capabilities. They identified our weaknesses and they planned accordingly. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just stumbled into defying the council. They had been planning for it since they first made contact with Galactic civilization. There's more, Dr. Extel said, her voice even more somber. Our psychological analysis reveals something we have never encountered before. Humans have a concept they call spite. It is the willingness to harm yourself. If it ensures your enemy is harmed more, they will accept mutual destruction rather than submit to domination. That's irrational, Keltharis protested. By our standards, yes, Dr. Extel agreed. But humans don't think like us. They evolved in an environment where submission meant death. Better to fight and die than surrender and be killed anyway. This psychology is deeply embedded in their culture. They have sayings like "give me liberty" or "give me death and we will fight them." On the beaches, they celebrate resistance. They honor those who refuse to surrender, even in impossible situations. She brought up historical examples. Humans defending hopeless positions. Humans fighting against overwhelming odds. Humans choosing death over slavery again and again throughout their history. Humans have chosen to fight rather than submit. They also have a capacity for what they call total war. Dr. Extel continued. It is the mobilization of every resource, every person, every bit of technology toward warfare. Most species negotiate before reaching this point. Humans see total war as a viable option. They will sacrifice everything to achieve victory. Felthara felt a chill run through her crystalline body. Are you saying that if we continue this conflict, they will fight to extinction? I am saying that is a very real possibility. Dr. Zextal confirmed. Humans have a saying, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. They mean it literally. Our analysts believe that if Earth faced imminent destruction, humanity would ensure that every council homeworld burned with them. They have the ships in position. They have the weapons, and they have the psychology to actually do it. The chamber erupted in frightened voices. This was unprecedented. The council had dealt with aggressive species before. They had dealt with warlike cultures. But they had never encountered a species that would choose mutual annihilation over surrender. Silence, Velthara commanded. Dr. Zextal, what is your recommendation? The Xenobiologist was quiet for a moment. Supreme arbiter, in my professional opinion, humanity cannot be conquered. They can only be destroyed completely. And the cost of doing so would be the destruction of most council worlds. They are too dangerous to fight and too stubborn to dominate. Then what do? We negotiate, Dr. Zextel said. Simply, we treat them as equals. We hope they are willing to coexist peacefully, because the alternative is unthinkable. After the presentation ended, Velthara remained in her chamber with her closest advisors. They reviewed the intelligence reports that had been coming in over the past few days. Each one was more disturbing than the last. Human ships had been detected near every council homeworld. Not attacking, not threatening, just watching, waiting. The message was clear. We can reach you whenever we want. The Galactic Intelligence Network had tried to hack human communication systems and failed. The humans had encryption methods that the Council's best technicians couldn't break. Worse, every time the Council tried to infiltrate human networks, the humans knew immediately they were better at information security than species that had been working on it for thousands of years. Economic analysts reported that human trade networks had become essential to dozens of species. If humanity suddenly stopped trading, it would cause economic chaos across multiple sectors of the galaxy. The humans had made themselves valuable enough that their destruction would hurt the Council as much as it hurt them. They've been playing chess while we were playing checkers, Velthara murmured. Supreme Arbiter, her aide asked. It's a human game, Velthara explained. Chess. It requires thinking several moves ahead, planning strategy. The humans have been planning this since they first met us. Every trade deal, every cultural exchange, every friendly conversation, all of it was preparation for this moment. 3 cycles after the destruction of the enforcement fleet, the human delegation arrived at the Council station. They did not arrive quietly or humbly. They arrived in a statement of power. The human dreadnought emerged from faster-than-light travel directly above the Council station. It was a massive vessel, 3 times the size of any Council ship, its hull covered in weapons that tracked every nearby vessel. It parked itself in direct violation of every Council protocol, close enough that its shadow fell across the station's observation windows. The message was clear. We are here. We are powerful, and we do not follow your rules. Velthara watched from the Council chamber as the human ship maintained its position. Any other species would have been fired upon for such a brazen violation of protocol. But no one gave that order. No one wanted to start a fight they might not win. They're requesting permission to dock. The station commander reported, his voice nervous. Grant it, Velthara replied, and extend them every diplomatic courtesy. The human delegation was small, just 5 people led by Secretary General Chen Martinez. She wore the same simple gray suit from her famous one-word transmission. Her face was calm, her movements confident. She walked into the Council chamber like she owned it. Behind her came Admiral Sarah Jackson, a tall woman with iron gray hair and cold eyes. Then Ambassador David Kim, a diplomatic specialist. Finally, 2 security officers who looked more like soldiers Then bodyguards, they were armed. Another violation of protocol. No one objected. Velthara rose from her seat. Secretary General Martinez. Welcome to the Galactic Council. We are pleased that you accepted our invitation to negotiate. Martinez smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. With respect, Supreme Arbiter, I didn't accept your invitation. I demanded this audience. You granted it. Let's be clear about who has leverage in this situation. The bluntness shocked the council. Members, no one spoke to the Supreme Arbiter that way, but Velthara simply nodded. You are correct. Please state your terms. Martinez walked to the center of the chamber. She didn't ask permission. She simply took command of the space. I'm not here to present terms of surrender, not ours, and interestingly, not yours either. I'm here to propose a new framework for galactic civilization. She activated a holographic display from a device on her wrist. It showed the current map of council space with all the tributary species marked in different colors. For 50,000 years, the council has maintained order through a simple system. Might makes right. You force younger species to pay tribute. You take their resources. You control their expansion. You justify this by calling it guidance and protection, but let's call it what it really is: exploitation. We have brought stability to the galaxy. Kelthros protested. Without the council, there would be chaos. Maybe, Martinez agreed. Or maybe you've prevented younger species from reaching their full potential because you needed them weak and dependent. We'll never know because you never get them a choice. She changed the display to show humanity's rapid expansion. We've been in space for 200 years. In that time, we've studied you carefully. We've learned your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses, and we've learned the one secret you've worked so hard to hide. Velthros felt her crystalline body go cold. Martinez smiled again. You're not as strong as you pretend. Martinez said flatly, your elder species have declining populations. Your military is outdated. Your weapons are old. Your tactics haven't changed in 10,000 years. Most of your power comes from reputation and the assumption that you're unbeatable, but you're not. The battle at New Sarajevo proved that. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Martinez waited patiently for the noise to die down. When it didn't, Admiral Jackson stepped forward and spoke one word very loudly. Quiet. The chamber fell silent. The Admiral's voice carried an authority that transcended species. It was the voice of someone who had commanded others in life and death situations. It was a voice that demanded obedience. Martinez continued as if nothing had happened. We cracked your military network 6 months ago. We've been reading your communications, watching your strategic planning, analyzing your fleet positions. We know everything about your military capabilities, and we know you're vulnerable. So you came here to conquer us, Senator? Thrix asked bitterly. No, Martinez said, and her voice was surprisingly gentle. We came here to make sure no one conquers anyone. Not you, not us, not anyone. She changed the display again. This time it showed a new map with all species marked in the same color. Here is what we're proposing. The council will immediately cease all tributary demands. Every species in the galaxy will be recognized as sovereign and equal. Resources will be traded Fairly, not extracted by force. Technology will be shared willingly, not confiscated. Military protection will be provided by a collective defense force, with representation from all species, not just the elder ones. That's impossible, Keltro said. Younger species are not ready for self-governance. They need guidance. They need freedom, Martinez corrected. And before you argue, let me make something clear. This isn't a negotiation. This is us telling you how things are going to work now, because we have leverage and you don't. Belthera leaned forward. What leverage? Martinez smiled. We know your secret. We know how weak you really are. If we wanted, we could broadcast that information across the entire galaxy. Right now, every species you forced into tribute would learn that they've been paying protection money to a council that can't actually protect them. What do you think would happen? The silence in the chamber was absolute. Everyone knew the answer: rebellion, chaos, the collapse of the galactic order, potentially civil war across hundreds of systems. You would cause the deaths of billions, Belthera said quietly. Yes, Martinez agreed, which is why we're not going to do it. We're going to give you a choice. Accept our proposal for a new galactic framework based on equality and cooperation. Help us build a system where no species dominates any other, or refuse and will release everything we know. The choice is yours. That's blackmail, Keltro said angrily. Yes, Martinez said again. It absolutely is. You taught us that power determines right. We learned that lesson. Well, now we're using our power to create a better system. You should be grateful. We could have done much worse. Belthera looked around the chamber. She saw fear in the faces of her fellow council members, fear and anger and helplessness. They had been outmaneuvered completely. The humans had prepared for this moment for 2 centuries, while the council had grown complacent in their assumed superiority. Why? Belthera asked. If you have the power to rule the galaxy, why create a system of equals? Why not become the new council and extract your own tribute? Martinez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. Because that's what you would do. That's what every elder species would do, but we're not you. We spent thousands of years fighting each other on Earth. We built empires and watched them fall. We conquered and were conquered. We learned a hard lesson: domination breeds resentment, and resentment breeds rebellion. The only sustainable peace is one where everyone chooses to participate, not one where the strong force the weak to comply. She walked closer to Belthera. You asked me why we don't want to rule. Here's your answer. Because we've seen what happens to empires. They always fall. Always. The bigger they are, the harder they crash. We don't want to build an empire that our grandchildren will have to defend. We want to build a community that our grandchildren will be proud to join. Admiral Jackson stepped forward. Also, ruling the galaxy sounds like a massive pain in the ass. Too much paperwork. The tension in the room broke slightly. A few council members made sounds that might have been nervous laughter. Martinez grinned. The Admiral makes a good point, Martinez said. We're not interested in micromanaging hundreds of species. We have our own worlds to develop, our own problems to solve. We just want to make sure no one bothers us or our friends, and the best way to ensure that is to create a system where everyone has a stake in maintaining peace. Velthara considered this everything. Martinez said made a terrible kind of sense. The humans had the power to tear down the council and build an empire of their own. Instead, they were proposing a system that limited their own power as much as anyone else's. What about the military? Velthara asked. You want a collective defense force. Who commands it? Rotating command structure, Martinez replied. Representatives from all major species, including the council elders. No single species has permanent control. Decisions are made collectively, and before you ask, yes, there will be oversight to prevent abuse. We've thought this through very carefully. And what if we refuse? Velthara asked. Quietly, Martinez's expression became cold again. Then we release all the information we have about the council's true military capacity. The younger species revolt, the galaxy descends into chaos, billions die. And when the dust settles, humanity will still be standing. Because we're very good at surviving chaos, but it would be a terrible waste. She paused. We don't want that. We'd rather work together, but if you force our hand, we will do what we must to ensure our survival and the freedom of other species. The choice is yours.